Eat, sleep, bet, repeat. That's how we get down on the opening line at EliteSportsBetting.com. I'll be your host, Benny Ricciardi, and today we're going to be talking a little NBA basketball action. So I got my two experts in here with me, Golfman Paulie, Real Frank Brank from EliteSportsBetting.com, and we're going to walk through all these games and give you guys some thoughts. So let's start off by finding out how these guys are doing this morning. So what's going on there, Paulie?
What's up, Benny? Just another day in the office, right?
Pretty much, man. Unfortunately, there was too long of a line at Dunkin' Donuts today, so I got to go with the Pepsi today to get my caffeine. But, I mean, you got to do what you got to do. You know, it's going to be a long day of content today. So, Frank, how about you, man? I know you were up early feeding the horses and all that stuff. So, how's the morning going for you?
Yeah, at least you got a Dunkin' Donuts, man. I drive down to the DG, pick up energy drinks every morning. So, yeah, it's going good, though, man. It's out here. It's snowing. I'm sure you'll be getting it in a few hours. So.
Oh, that sucks. That's the worst news I heard today. I got to be honest. I woke up this morning and, like, my car was completely frosted over on the top. So I actually said if there's any kind of rain or whatever today, we're gonna wind up with a bunch of snow. So
yeah, I think I'd rather have the snow than the rain at least. So
yeah, not gonna complain. Yeah, I don't mind going out in the snow with a jacket on. It's a lot better than coming in and having to take all the wet clothes off and throw all that shit in the dryer.
Yeah. Yep.
But anyway, you guys don't want to hear about that. You want to hear about a little NBA basketball. So that's what we're going to be talking here today. Pretty nice little slate here for Wednesday. I think we got 9 games, if I'm not mistaken. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7, 8, 9 games today. We got lines out for every one of them. There's not a lot of major news that is sitting out there. Some of it's already kind of been working its way through. There are a few guys that are questionable, and we'll kind of mention them as we go through. So let's start right at the top with the first game. Chicago Bulls against the Washington Wizards. Wizards are a 1-point favorite in this game. The open was actually, from what I'm looking at here, it's kind of bouncing all around. There's a couple places with the Wizards as a 1-point favorite, a couple places with Chicago as a 1-point favorite, a couple pick'ems in there as well. 230 total we have in this game. Bunch of injuries on the Washington side, which might change things around. So, Paulie, we'll start with you. Anything you like in this one?
Yeah, there's a couple things. One of them is probably, my favorite bet already is Chicago Bulls first quarter unders. So I'll be going back to the well here again. It's sitting at 59.5. So the Bulls are 6-23 in terms of going over in the first quarter. So anytime you can go 23-6, it seems like the market's just not catching up because it's a derivative bet and books are not adjusting for it. And Washington's kind of like a neutral team in terms of that. But when they're playing at home, with the line sitting at 59.5, I just don't see how the Bulls and the Wizards are going to combine to get Bulls probably in 30 points each. Is going to be kind of tough based upon how methodical the Bulls play in the first 6-7 minutes of games. Also in the game I like is Bulls first quarter and first half. Washington has been atrocious in the first half. They're the 27th ranked team in the NBA in my model, where the Bulls are the 14th. So I think the Bulls come out strong. And then most likely I'll be taking, if Bulls are leading at half, probably Washington's second half. The Bulls have been absolutely terrible at closing games if they have leads. They're 28th in my model for second half efficiency, while Washington is all the way up in 10th, which is pretty high for a team who's near the bottom of the NBA in terms of record.
All right, so you actually have a lot in this game.
Yes.
We're looking at Bulls first half, Bulls first quarter, Bulls first half, Bulls under in the first quarter, right?
Yes.
But then in game, depending on how things work out, maybe looking to switch over to the other side and take Washington. Now, are you betting the game at all, or are you thinking that
I if I had to pick a side, I would lean towards Washington for the game. I just don't want to fire that because there's very high likelihood that the Bulls are going to have a lead at halftime, and I can get a better line on Washington.
All right, so there you go. That's also some good, some good strategy advice there for you guys if you're going to be looking to play this game. So, Frank, what are you looking at here? Anything?
Yeah, I'm going to chase Paulie here. I've got the under for the game. These Wizards unders have been kind of my kryptonite this year. But see it at 230.5, minus 108 at Pinnacle. I wouldn't play much lower than 230.5, minus 110-ish. It looks like could go down a little bit in some spots depending on what book you're at. But I've got it lined at 228. Kind of goes back to what Paulie's saying. We talked about this last week with the Bulls first halves, and I think this is what's kind of generating that. You can kind of see it in the numbers here. Chicago is the 6th fastest team in the NBA from a seconds per possession pace, and that's for the season. So in their first 29 games, they're playing at 13.7 seconds per possession. But if you look at the last week, and this was true last week as well, if we look at over the last couple of weeks, they're like league average now. They're like at 14.3 seconds. So the Wizards haven't changed much all year. They're around 5th in the league. But if this Chicago first half stuff keeps trending, I think we're going to keep chasing these unders with them, even though the Wizards pace is up. Rui and Wagner are out. That's not particularly that concerning for me. They're below average players, maybe slightly above a replacement level player. But, from a spread perspective, I got this at Washington minus 1.6 and a total of 228. So we're going to play the under small. And like I said, at 230.5, we play it. 231, we play it, but probably not at 230 unless we're going to get plus money or really low big on that number.
Yeah, and a lot of the books I'm looking at here have it at either 230.5 or 231 at the moment right now anyway. So you can go get in on that at that number. One thing I'm going to throw out there, I mean, you mentioned that both Wagner and Rui are out today. Thomas Bryant's been out for a while as well. So they are very, very thin in the front court. You're probably going to get 35, 36 minutes out of, Davis Bertans tonight. And then maybe, I don't know, I don't want to say more than 30 minutes out of Jan Mahimi because I just don't know if he could even play that many minutes. But they really, it's that thin that they really don't have anybody else that they can throw out there. So
and Beal might get 40 minutes.
I think he will. I mean, they're basically down to like an 8-man rotation. I think they called a guy up from the G League as well, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, you can't really expect him to play more than, I don't know, 10, 12 minutes maybe. So there's going to be, especially for fantasy, there's going to be a lot of these guys that are logging heavy minutes tonight. And the one thing that they won't do, you have two guys in Ish Smith and Isaiah Thomas that really can't be on the floor together. I mean, honestly, they're both my size. So they're not going to be able to guard any other team in the NBA with both of those guys together. And if you look at last game, that's exactly what happened. They basically split the 48 minutes right down the middle. So you have 7 guys basically that are going to be 6 and a G League player that are going to have to play the other 4 spots and, 48 minutes for all those guys. So when the props come out for this game, if you can get some low scoring totals, you got to figure most of these guys are going to score above average just because of the fact they're going to play more minutes and, that's going to help them out. So definitely take a peek at some of those props when they come out too.
The other thing on a modeling perspective on a game like this is you see guys like Beal and Bertans who are definitely plus players, 1.5 points, 2-point players. When they're playing 37, 40 minutes, you're talking – there's going to be efficiency loss. I mean, these guys, it's not like you can just play at the same level for an unlimited amount of minutes, unless you're LeBron James. And I think he could probably do that. But, Bradley Beal isn't going to be a plus 1.5, plus 2 player over 40 minutes. 30 minutes, sure. But 40 minutes, that's a lot. And he's pretty much not sitting the whole game. So, he'll come out in the first quarter, at the end of the first quarter maybe. But, 10 minutes left in the second quarter, and he's going to pretty much play the rest of the game.
Yeah, he's going to have to. I mean, that's kind of the way it is when you have a rotation. We saw this last week with the Miami Heat too, when they had all these guys, and it's still, even now, they still have all these guys out. They're going with an 8-man rotation, and, you're getting a lot of minutes out of some of these guys, a lot of fantasy points out of them, a lot of out production on their average, points per game and stuff. So those are props that you can take advantage of, in the right spots. And like you said, with the superstars, with guys like Beal and Bertans, who we're going to actually produce when they're on the floor. Not, I'm still not playing Jan Mahimi props today. Let's put it that way. There's just no way that's going to happen. So the next game we got Toronto against Detroit. We were waiting on some news here because both Andre Drummond and Blake Griffin are listed as questionable. From what I'm seeing, it looks like Drummond's definitely going to be back playing. He had something with his eye, so it wasn't like an actual injury that should affect his minutes or anything much that they have to limit him. So if he's a go, which I think he will be, I think he's going to be a full go. I wouldn't worry about that. Most places I'm seeing Toronto around a 5-point favorite, and I don't actually have a line on this game. Do you guys have a total on it?
3.5, 217 is what I'm looking at.
All right, so 3.5, 217, 3.5 for Toronto, I assume, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Toronto minus 3.5, 217 total. Frank, we'll start with you this time. What are you looking at in this one?
Yeah, I mean the injuries are tough. Van Vliet doubtful. Blake and Drummond game time decision, like you said. I think I've got everybody out in that game. Just putting everybody out gives me a number around 6.5 plus 6.5
Mhm.
and 218. That being said, I don't like to make calls on games like this, especially when there's a bunch of other games going on. If Drummond plays, I think that's like a 3-point difference. So if we're saying Drummond's in, that'll give me like plus 3.5 to 18.
Mhm.
With Van Vliet and Blake, guys who have the ball a lot, it starts to bring in this question of pace a little bit. How fast a lot of these teams are going to play with or without these guys. So it's a pass for me. It's a relatively light day for me, but I'm not going to reach if I don't have to. And all of these questionable guys aren't doing anything for me here.
Yeah, Paulie, how about you? Anything in this game, or are you kind of taking a wait and see approach to
No,
it?
I'm leaning towards Toronto in this game. So I make the line based upon all three guys playing. I make the line at -5 Toronto. So I see an edge right now. If Van Vliet sits and Blake and Drummond play, I have the line at 4. So there's still a little bit of value there. But if you happen to have Drummond or Blake sit, there'll be a big edge at that point. So I definitely like the Toronto spread there. But with that said, the only thing I'm going to use for Toronto is going to use them as part of like a money line parlay with a high favorite that we'll talk about later on. Because I think the money line's like -170 or something like that now.
That's not too bad, actually.
So you compare that with a team that's like an 8 or 9 point favorite and get around even money. But if you're looking in terms of like in-game betting here, taking Toronto after the first quarter for the full game or for the first half has been a really good spot. Toronto's the second best team in the NBA in terms of like second quarter efficiency, so their bench has been doing really good against the second unit for the other teams. Meanwhile, Detroit's 24th in the league in that. And then that carries over to the second half as well, as Toronto's the 5th best second half team and Detroit's the 17th best second half team.
I like that. See, I don't do a ton of in-game betting. Occasionally, I'll throw it in there, but like I said, it's a good place to find a lot of inefficiencies in the market and get some better numbers than you can, especially if you know what you're looking for here.
Exactly. I mean, it could be Toronto could be down, 5 at the end of the first quarter, and the line could be pick 'em. So
yeah, and they're the kind of team that just grinds you out and comes back and then pulls away at the end because they know how to win. So that's why I kind of like that. So I'm making a little note of that to myself while I'm watching games tonight. And if I see Toronto losing, I think I'm going to be firing in there as well. So I like that bet there. So here's one that I want to get your guys' opinion on because I have a pretty strong opinion on this game, and I have a feeling you guys are not going to like what I have to say. The Charlotte Hornets and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland currently is anywhere between a 3 to a 3.5 point favorite in this game right here. Charlotte is on the tail end of a back-to-back right now. But the Cleveland Cavaliers have been blown out by 20 points or more in 5 of their last 8 games. I think this is one of the biggest trash teams in the NBA at this point. I would even go so far as to say that they're actively tanking because there are a lot of times when, even if it's like if a team's down 10 or 12 points in the third quarter, they still usually want to roll their starters a little bit and see if they can make a run and get it close enough to come back. Cleveland, on the other hand, will just sit Kevin Love and just leave him on the bench. And he'll play like 24 minutes, 25 minutes in a game. I honestly like Charlotte here, even on the tail end of a back-to-back, which is something I know you numbers guys never really like to see. So, Paulie, tell me why I'm wrong.
You're not that far off. I have this game right on market. My numbers are right on, so I don't have any plays in this game. So it's not that crazy to go your way there.
All right. Anything for you, Frank?
Yeah, well, let's break it down a little bit. To be clear, I'm not playing the Cavs, and I'm not playing Charlotte. But if you look at the Cavs' last 6, they played the Sixers, got crushed by like 50.
Mm-hmm.
Got crushed by the Celtics. Lost to the Rockets at home in a game where they led with a few minutes left.
Yep.
Beat the Spurs in overtime. Then played the Bucks and Raptors. So it has not been the easiest run. Sixers,
Sure.
Celtics, Rockets, Spurs, Bucks, Raptors. The Charlotte Hornets are not any of those teams, and honestly not even close to those teams. I mean, these are two, pretty awful teams here playing. I wouldn't say there's a much of a difference between either of these teams, especially with Charlotte coming on the back-to-back, and I think it's a 3-4 for them. That being said, I have this lined at 4, and that's with I think it's Kevin Porter's questionable, and he plays a handful of minutes. He plays like 20-plus minutes. He stinks like most of these guys, but if his minutes get absorbed by at least the starters or the better players on the Cavs, I could see this, having a little bit of a play on the Cavs. That being said, I don't like to play the side and the total in the same game, and I'm going to play the under here. But it wouldn't surprise me to see a little bit of Cavs money, maybe to 4, 3.5, 4. It's 3.5 in some spots now, mostly 3. But if we look at over the last week, the Hornets are the second slowest team in the NBA over the last 4 games. The Cavs are the slowest team over their last 4 games. 15.5 seconds for Charlotte per possession, 15.8 for the Cavs. If we look at their season numbers, the Cavs are at 15.3 and Charlotte's at 14.8. So they're both slow to begin with, but they're absurdly slow over the last week. Kind of assume that's what bad teams do to stay into games. If you're going to try to run with the Rockets, you're probably not going to beat them. If you create more possessions at which you're a disadvantage of, you're probably not going to beat them. You at least have a chance if you shoot really well, like they did against the Rockets, for them, and the Rockets play bad, if you can slow the game down. We had played some Cavs overs recently, but over the last week, they've just grinded it out to a halt. Same with Charlotte. So I've got the game lined at 210. And like I said, the best number I could come to right now is like 3.5, Cavs minus 3.5. So I don't foresee playing the side there, but we're going to play the under. I think it's at 213.5, and I would play 213 as well at normal VIG.
Yeah, so at least we're in agreement on the under. I think this is going to be a really ugly game, which is why I am willing to bet on Charlotte today if you're going to give me 3.5 points. The Cavs are not good enough to be favored against anybody, even at home. Yeah. I don't think they should be favored against anybody. And what this line is saying with them at home is that they're better than the Charlotte Hornets, which I don't think is the case. Because, you get 3 points basically for being at home, which would have put them on a neutral court as like a 0.5 point favorite. I don't see that, to be perfectly honest with you. So I like the Charlotte side, and I'm in agreement with you on the under. And I knew you guys were not going to be on that because I knew the numbers never show up that way, especially on a back-to-back. But
it's the 3 and 4 as well. So I've got that at like a 4.5 point disadvantage to be on the road compared to a neutral court, to be on the road and to be on a 3 and 4 and to be on a back-to-back. It's like 4.5 points.
And Charlotte has some injuries as well too with Batum and PJ Washington, I think, as well, right?
PJ's out, yeah. So
I don't see Batum as a negative, though. I see Batum being out as actually a positive for the guys that they put in there because they're producing better than what he is giving you at this stage of his career right now.
But that hurts your depth on a back-to-back in 3 out of 4, though.
That is true. No, that does make sense there as well.
So you look at the Hornets' more recent games too. I mean, 110 to 102. They beat the Kings yesterday, but they played 107 to 85 against the Pacers, 83 to 73 against the Bulls. They're just grinding these games out. They can't score to begin with, and when you play that slow, I can't come to a number close to 213.5. 210 is what I got. So.
Well, that's what I said. That's why I like the under too. And if it's going to be a game that ends up in the 80s, which I don't think is a crazy thing to even say with these two teams playing, 3.5 points is a lot of points when you got a low scoring game like that. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. So let's move on to some of these other ones. We got Miami against Philly here. We got a 212 total, I think, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around there, 211, 212, depending on where you're looking. The Philadelphia 76ers are favored by 7. They actually are getting pretty healthy. Miami has a lot of injuries there. Short rotation, but it's injuries that we've seen they've been playing with. Let's see, Goran Dragic, Justice Winslow, and James Johnson all already ruled out for them. So, Paulie, we'll start with you this time. What are you looking at, Miami, Philly?
There's no plays in this game for me. I think I have think my line for this game I think is -6.5, so pretty much right on market. There's really not much there. The only thing is I may have potential for in-game in this game is if one of the teams happen to get out to like a 10-point lead, I'd be willing to take the other team on that one, just because I think this ends up being a fairly, not to say close game, but it's I don't think the team's going to blow somebody out here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me as well. I think this is going to be pretty competitive, and it's actually one of the ones I'm looking forward to watch tonight, although I don't have any bets on this game either. Frank, anything you're looking at here?
Yeah, another case where I'm not really looking to get involved with all these injuries. Embiid is back, right? So
yeah, he's expected to play. Yeah,
he wasn't even on the injury report for today, I believe.
Yeah, so Embiid's back. Winslow and Dragic are out. His ball handlers are out. Tough to guess. I mean, I know they've been out, but if you look at Miami, they've actually gone faster over the last week. I've got the game at 6.5 as well, 210 total. I don't really want to get involved with the injuries and Embiid being back, but I don't have a play to begin with. It's tough situation for Miami, but these teams could see themselves meeting later on and be pretty good situation in there. Philly's been kind of like an analytical darling for a couple of years now, and has underperformed, for the most part, but they kind of got their chance this year. So we'll see if they can kind of keep putting these wins together and make their way through the East.
Yeah, and remember, Josh Richardson is back over there for them as well, so they're pretty much back to full strength here too. Like I said, I think Philly wins this game, but I don't really have a play on it, and I'm not taking the 6 or 7 points. Seems like around the number that it should be. So I don't think there's any real edge there. So the next game, we got the Memphis Grizzlies playing the Oklahoma City Thunder. We got a 219 total in this one. Oklahoma City is favored by somewhere around 6 points, 6.5, depending on where you're looking there. A couple different numbers in different places. We'll start with you, Frank. Anything you like in this one?
This is OKC?
Yeah, OKC Memphis.
Okay. Let's see what I got here. -6.5, 219. No, I've got the game at 6.5, 221. So a little move towards the over here. I'm seeing some 218.5s, which I would consider. I'd probably want to get 218. Give me a little 3-point edge there. I didn't play anything in particular on this game. Pretty solid on the side. Allen is questionable, but he stinks, so I don't really care much about that. Pretty standard game. I mean, Memphis and OKC have pretty much stuck to their guns, and at full health, they're not really going to change pace much. They're two completely average pace teams. It seems like OKC maybe slightly on the slower side, but these teams are pretty predictable. Nothing crazy going on. So, like I said, if the number keeps going down towards, if I can get it 218, I would play the over. But right now, 218.5 is the best I'm seeing. So, kind of holding out for that. But if I see it, I would take a shot at 218.
Yeah, so the line actually opened about 217.5 and then moved up quickly to, 219, to be honest. And then a couple places I'm actually seeing it come back down. Like DraftKings Sportsbook has it down at 218.5. I think PointsBet has it at 218.5. So if you're in Jersey, there's a couple 218.5s. Paulie, anything you're looking at here? You think we need to get down to something, or
yeah, I think there's a little bit of edge on the Minnesota side. So with the current line of being -7, if Cat is indeed out,
okay,
Memphis OKC. Sorry, Memphis OKC. No, I have that game pretty much right on market there.
Okay, so nothing really in the bet there. So that's not really one we're looking at. Maybe if we get the total coming down a little bit, there might be a little bit that we can look at on the on the over there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the next game. I don't have a line on this game for the morning. You guys tell me if you're seeing anything on New Orleans, Minnesota. Obviously, New Orleans is on the tail end of the back-to-back after losing last night and forcing our wonderful CEO, Rob, to have to take a shot of Jägermeister and Mayo next time we do a lunch money show. But like you said, the big news is that Karl Anthony Towns is listed as questionable here. So it's really tough to kind of talk too much about any lines or anything on this game without knowing that news, which we probably won't have for another couple hours. But, Paulie, we'll start with you. Anything on this one? Or
Yeah, I would actually lean towards Minnesota here. So the current line is Minnesota -7. With Cat out here, I make the line as -6. With Cat in, I make the line -10. So if Cat does indeed play, there's going to be a pretty big edge there. But either way, even if Cat doesn't play, I think Minnesota takes this game not fairly easily. But I don't expect Pelicans to put up much trouble against them here, being on the back-to-back after the close game last night. So I think Minnesota makes a good piece of parlay if you want to put it in with a team like Toronto or something like that. You can get plus money, or if you want to put them with a team like Denver as well, I wouldn't mind that.
Okay. Frank, anything that you're looking at here?
Yeah, so just how I've got it set up now, I've got Redick out. He's questionable. Like you said, New Orleans on the back-to-back, 3 and 4 back-to-back, just like was it Charlotte, I think. And I put Towns in, getting 35 minutes. So I've got it lined at 7.5. And what's the total on this game?
Total is 231.
Yeah, I've got it at 230.5. So, and again, that assumes Towns plays and Redick's out. So, not that Redick is worth a ton, but he's definitely a tangible asset to the Pelicans. I did play the Pelicans last night. It's kind of interesting not to see much of an edge here. And then they, of course, cover in the regulation and then lose an OT. So I was on the losing end of that as well. That being said, I've got it, like I said, have it at 7.5. I think if Towns in, you'll probably see some money, even though I'm kind of bang on the number. I would bet that some money comes in if he's announced, and there's definitely some uncertainty there. But no play for me on the side or total in this game. And like I said, I'd rather wait to see if these guys are in or out anyway before I make an assessment. If Towns is out, I'm probably coming in on the other side. So let me see what he's worth here. Somewhere around 4 points.
Makes sense.
So I'll see if he's out, you could see that line, assuming they're middling in some way. I think you could see that line around 4 or 5 if he gets announced out. But if he's in, you might see it around 8 or 9. So.
All right, so you're thinking right now they kind of just split in the difference figure, and if it happens, it happens. In one way or another, we're not too far off.
Yeah, I mean, I think typically what you see is, money comes in before they announce it on Twitter, right? Like, so,
right.
It's probably money's probably going to beat us regardless here.
Right.
But that being said, I've got it at 7.5. So if money, I would still need it to be pretty low. I would need to see a ton of money come in on the Pelicans with Redick questionable on a back-to-back, and then Towns announced in to be interested. So, I'm pretty much just rolling this one out. And compared to OKC, where like if it hits 218, I would play it. This isn't going to be one of those situations for me.
Okay, so that's good. I mean, like I said, one of the things I like to do here is kind of teach everybody, all our subs, like why you guys are looking at certain lines and what you're looking for there, so that they can do it as well. Because on top of getting the plays from us, a lot of people want to learn how to be better at making money, sports betting, and doing things like that, which is why we bring you two guys on, because you've been doing it for a while. So let's look at the next game here. I know I'm gonna let Frank go first here, because I know Paulie loves this game. So it's Orlando against Denver. We're looking at like a 203, 204 total in this one. Orlando favored by somewhere around 8 or 9 points in this one, depending on where you're looking.
I think Denver's favored, right?
I'm sorry, what did I say? Orlando, Denver favored. See, I told you.
That's the case.
Paulie's chopping at the bit to talk about this game right now.
I'm leaving the screen right now to go bet that if it's Orlando.
All right, so Frank, you go first. 9-point Denver being favored. We're looking at about a 203, 204 total, depending on where you're looking at it. Anything you're liking on this game?
No, I've got it at 204 on the total. Orlando's on the back-to-back, also in a 3 and 4. So like I said, about 4.5 point punishment there for them on the road. Even if I liked Orlando, I would be hesitant because of that. Granted, I'm still modeling it, but Millsap questionable. He's still quite good, which is kind of incredible to see. He's like a 3 to 4 point plus player. So I have him out, I believe. Just, I don't know. I'm just trying to make a judgment here. But if I have him out, I've still got the number at 8. So if he plays, I could see this number being, like, again, you can see it's at 9. So I think they're kind of middling it here. But you could see it be 10, 11 if he gets announced in. But other than that, this total's kind of everywhere for me. I don't, luckily I'm on 204, but these teams have had vastly different kind of runs of totals in the last few games. So I'm avoiding this and kind of waiting to see the news. If for some reason that number were to come down and Millsap's announced in, I would fire on Denver, but nothing for me here to start.
All right, Paulie, go ahead. The floor is all yours.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest edges of the day is Denver here. So one of the biggest spots I look for the year is when Denver is playing at home on rest against a team who is on a back-to-back. And there's a lot of the situations this year where Denver gets lucky like that. So Orlando just played a tight game last night in Utah in a little bit of elevation and now heads to higher elevation in Denver, which makes it even harder to recover. And as mentioned, 3 games in 4 nights. With it being a back-to-back, I think the Magic is, there hasn't been any reports of this. It's just, my thinking. I think the Magic might just randomly sit Vucevic tonight because he's still coming back from injury, played some games here, and are worried about, his durability at this point. So if he ends up sitting out, it could be a massive edge. But even if Vucevic is playing and Millsap is out, I still see this as a very large edge for Denver. So the bets I'm liking there are definitely Denver at -9. Like Denver is part of a parlay with Toronto. Denver is part of a parlay with Minnesota. And then also Denver first half -5, -5.5. Because I think Orlando probably comes out a little sluggish after last night.
Yeah, and I forget who actually wrote the article, but it might have been a year or two ago where, there was an article in, sports betting circles that was kind of making its way around, and you basically lost your wise guy card if you bet against Denver when one of these teams was on a West Coast swing on the tail end of a back-to-back and, coming into Denver and the altitude and all that. So this has been an angle that, sports bettors have been trying to capitalize on in the right spots for a long time here. I 100% love Denver. And I know you mentioned earlier using like Toronto as one half of a money line parlay. The Toronto-Denver money line parlay to me, that's like money in the bank. I really like those two teams here to win today. I think you get around even money. It might have been a little bit below even money when I tried it before. But if you put those two teams together, I think that's a good money line parlay bet there. And then, like these guys are saying, depending on how some of the injury news works out, 9 is not a insignificant number. But I really do think Denver runs away with this game. So I don't think it's crazy to take a 9 in this game as well. So I'm kind of on board there with you, Paulie. One way or another, I'm definitely going to have some exposure to this. Whether I take the line or if I just go with the money line on it.
Yeah. And one other thing for the game is a small lean to the under in the first quarter here as well, especially if you expect Orlando to come out a little sluggish. If you look at the teams combined over-unders for first quarter, they're 20 and 31. So small edge there as well. I think it's 52.5, which seems a bit high considering Orlando's kind of slowed down on the pace side a little bit, and Denver as well.
Yeah, both of these teams are towards the lower end of the league and, their pace factor to begin with. And then they're actually both very good defensive teams too. So when you have all those things put together, it's, this is the equivalent of, a pitcher's duel that we're going to be watching here today. So it's not going to be the normal high scoring West Coast affair that you normally think of in the Western Conference. All right, so we got Boston against Dallas in the next game here. Listen, the Luka Doncic injury changes a lot of things with Dallas. This was a game that I would have been looking forward to. At this point in time, I'm really not. I kind of felt like the line should have been a little bit bigger here. I think Boston is a 2 to 3 point favorite, depending on where you're looking. Looking at a total of about 218, 219 on some of these different ones. What are you guys looking at for this game?
Yeah, I don't have an edge on the game. It's hard to say with these big injuries how they affect the team, who gets the minutes until we see more of it. I think Smart is out as well.
Yeah,
ball handler for Boston. Dallas probably taking like a 4 to 5 point hit with Luka out. So, I thought just looking at the game before I even looked at my model that maybe Dallas would have get a little bit of money. They're really not. I've got it at +1.5 and at 216.5. So a little bit hold towards the under, but like I said, it's hard to say, with someone who always has the ball like
Mhm.
Luka, how that team's going to be affected by pace, how they're going to be, who's going to get more shots, who's going to get more minutes until they're probably still trying to figure that out. Right.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see more games before I start to get in on that, and Smart as well. Again, he's been in and out. And we have years of data on Smart to know what they do when he's out or whatever.
Mhm.
But with Dallas injury and not a big enough edge on the under here for me to play it, I would probably want that to go up a whole nother point, which I don't foresee that happening to play the under. But current number, I'm probably just going to let this one go and kind of wait and see on Dallas and see how they handle things going forward.
Paulie, anything for you?
Yeah, right on market on this game for me. I'm both the total and the spread.
Yeah, I mean, and again, as a fantasy guy, this is one of those spots that if you're playing in tournaments today, you're going to want to take some chances on some of these Dallas guys because there's a ton of production to go around. I mean, Luka was a 30-40% usage guy basically on a game-by-game basis. So not only do you have to make up the 35 minutes, but you got to make up for 20-something shots. You got to make up for near double-digit rebounds. I mean, him and James Harden were the two best players in fantasy up to this point in the season when he went down. And honestly, on any given night, those two guys are basically putting up very similar numbers with 60, 70 fantasy point games.
Who do you see getting those, shot? There's a lot of shots. There's a lot of ball handling there to go around.
So last game it was Porzingis that got a little more of the offense. Tim Hardaway Jr. got a bunch of it in the first game. Jalen Brunson was a guy who saw more of the touches and the ball handling. But again, I mean, we've had a game and a half, like you said. So that could have been matchups. That could have been, foul. Like there's 100 other factors that will smooth themselves out as we see more of these games. Right now, it's a guessing game. And that's why I said for like tournaments, when you have situations like this in fantasy, in daily fantasy at least, for tournaments, this is the kind of team where you're picking out 4 or 5 of these guys and throwing them in, hoping you catch the one that does get the big boost here. Because basically right now it's up for grabs. Like most teams, after a couple games, who's going to take most of the shots, who's going to be handling the ball, where it's going to go. When situations like this arise in the middle of a season, you don't really know that for sure. So you're getting all these guys that are now priced as $3,000 or $4,000 guys that are going to have, $5,000 or $6,000 rolls, but we don't know which one is going to have the $5,000 or $6,000 roll. So if you catch that lightning in the bottle, these are the days where those guys win somebody $100,000, but you also lose all your money if you pick, like Seth Curry had a big game last game. He wasn't even on my radar, like as a guy that was going to potentially pop here. So we really don't know where it's all going to go,
And it could change pretty rapidly, I'm assuming, if say Curry or Brunson have a couple good games shooting, then they're going to get the ball. And if they struggle for 2 games, they're probably not going to get the ball anymore.
Yeah. And that's the thing right now. I mean, and even the minutes, if those guys like Curry played really well last game, I wouldn't doubt that Curry's going to get the minutes here. But if he plays like crap tonight and somebody else steps up and, DeLon Wright steps up or somebody else and plays well, then the minutes are going to wind up going there. And I don't even know, like you said, I don't even know if the coaches and the team know which way they want to go at this point, because when you lose your superstar, you kind of got to change everything around. So it's going to be a problem. It's going to be something, but where there's problems, there's also, potential for upside. So, all right, last game we got Golden State Warriors, Portland Trail Blazers. Portland is about a 9.5 to 10-point favorite here in most of these places I'm looking at a 219 total in this game altogether. So, Frank, we'll start with you. Warriors, Portland, what are you looking at?
Yeah, so the total actually got bet up to 221 in some spots, 220. I'm seeing it everywhere, 220, 220 and a half, 221, all different bigs. So I've got the game line at 9.5 and 218 and a half on the total. So I lean to the under, but I would want to have probably 221 and a half if it goes there. At this rate, you could see a number of books getting there or not getting there. It looks like, there's an entire point different depending on where you're looking. Bookmaker at 220, Pinnacle at 221. And that number's going up. I don't typically, find myself playing against big line moves for obvious reasons. There are smart people out there. And surely there's smarter people than me out there making some bets at times. So if I would want to see, at least another half point to a point, depending on where you're looking to play the under here. This Warriors team has been quite interesting, with their pace and everything, who's getting the ball and whatnot. They're playing way slower than what you would normally see, obviously, without Curry and everything. So I lean to the under, but again, it's one of those games where it's like wait and see and still maybe not take a side here,
Paulie, anything for you?
Yeah, I took Golden State plus 9.5 here on the road at Portland. I just don't believe in Portland being that good of a team to be giving almost a double-digit favorite. I just really don't get that line. I got it closer to about 7.5, what I think the line should be here. Golden State's kind of a grindy, gritty team. They got some of their pieces back healthy here. And in a game that, both teams aren't necessarily that, needing to have a win here, but I just don't see Portland having the motivation to try to blow something out here. So it's just kind of just a play based on the pure numbers here. I don't think Golden State's going to win the game, but I don't see how Portland's going to win by 10.
Yeah, so to kind of put together what both of you guys are saying, I don't have a bet on this game myself, but I noticed the same thing that Frank was saying where, Golden State is playing slower than a lot of people predicted them this season. So when you're looking at 9.5 points against a team that's kind of been playing slower, again, 9.5 is a lot of points. And, I kind of lean towards the under here myself, although I wouldn't, like I said, I don't have a bet on this game at the moment. So if you're leaning to the under and you're still giving 9.5 points, it's a lot tougher to get it when you're in those lower scoring games. So if this comes in lower scoring, it might not get to that 9.5.
And over the last few games, Portland's been playing almost a second slower, 3/4 of a second slower per possession. It's like I said, it's more of a lean than it is a play. But if you're really looking to chase a game later, you can maybe hit that under. Which honestly probably goes similar to what Paul is saying. Is if we have less points, less of a chance for Portland to blow them out, I guess. So, not that I have a play on the side, but it kind of fits together. Decently there.
I was gonna say, I think I've kind of talked myself into it now with a lot of these a lot of these stats that we're throwing out there all kind of point to this game being a little bit lower scoring. And
so Benny, you're gonna parlay the under here with Golden State then, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll go all in on it. We'll see what happens. We'll take all the winnings from yesterday and just throw them right back in. We'll see what happens.
Some of your Denver money just came in too, Paulie. So Benny must have put in a limit bet while we were sitting here on Denver.
I didn't put in that big of a bet, so I don't know what you're looking at. But yeah, that's it. I mean, that was one that I hadn't been on yet, but I'm going to be on now. Like I said, I do like Denver to win that game. I like Toronto to win that one. I've stayed away from the Minnesota side more just because I wanted to get the Towns news before I throw that one into a money line parlay kind of deal. But Toronto and Denver, I'm not going to say I'm certain to win because bad things happen sometimes, but I feel pretty good about that bet. I'm not going to lie about that. All right, so
about the Rockets last week when we did the show, and they had needed a nice little burst at the end there to win by 6 against Cleveland. So
and they were down like 20 at one point. They were down big. It was big double digit. I forget the exact number, but I was like looking at it like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me.
Then they came back, and then started the fourth quarter. They got run out again, and then they needed some heroics at the end there to win the game.
I think we've actually had this discussion before about it too, though, is when you play the style that they play, like that's going to happen. You can beat anybody by 20 and you could lose to anybody by 20 depending on if those shots are falling or not, because
just that high variance style of play, man.
Yeah, so that's what makes them tough. All right, so that was basically all the games we had on doc for today. Anybody got anything they want to add here? If not, I'll sign us off.
Nope.
All right, so they're not the best in the business for nothing there, folks. That's what we say. But either way, this has been Benny, for Paulie, for Frank, signing off for the opening line at EliteSportsBetting.com.